Yo, what's going on guys, it's Cynical and welcome back to another video. Today I wanted to dig up an interesting piece of Jak and Daxter history that's been playing on my mind for years now. As a kid, I used to stumble onto a lot of official video game websites to get a scoop and sometimes an inside look at different games. Back in the late 90s and early 2000s, the best way to get information for a game was to visit its website the developer or publisher launched, aside from jumping into old gaming forums or walkthroughs. And man, this takes me back. Old school video game websites had a big emphasis on being all interactive with music blaring in the background, download pages for wallpapers, information on characters, lore and locations, and so much more. One that I used to always go on over to was the official Jak and Daxter European website known as jakanddaxterlegend.com. I recently remembered this website and playing an interesting little flash game as a kid that loosely and inconsistently followed the beginning of the game. I started to do a bit of research on this as I couldn't for the life of me remember what it was called, but remember it being almost Zelda-esque with being a 2D sprite-based mini-adventure, being able to collect power cells, precursor orbs, eco, and explore Sandover Village, Sentinel Beach, and the Forbidden Jungle. I'm making this sound pretty top-notch, but honestly it's nothing to gawk over. I eventually came across the website URL, but unfortunately figured out that it became dead back in 2013. I did a bit more research and figured out the name of the flash game contained on the European site. It was known as Jak and Daxter The Lost Levels, and via the Wayback Machine and Internet Archive, I was able to re-access the site from snaps across the years. This is what the site looks like. It was basic, as most websites back then were, with a render of Jak and Daxter, the logo, and two clickable links, Future and Past. Future contained a bunch of stuff on the Precursor legacy like tips for the game, a download page that contained wallpapers, character info, and location information, whereas Past contained more lore-based stuff and history of development. But we had an interesting third link here, the Lost Levels. Now unfortunately, via the Wayback Machine, the game can no longer be accessed, and interestingly, there's little to no footage or even any information on it. There's quite literally only one video that exists on YouTube for it, which bless Apache Bloop for uploading an almost solid 14 minutes of gameplay back in 2011. This right here is Jak and Daxter The Lost Levels, an official flash game to promote the release that was only ever accessible on the European website. Now, the game does have a wiki page that gives us a bit of insight towards some backstory. According to the wiki, listed on the Jak and Daxter website, it explained that the Lost Levels had existed before the actual development of the proper game back in the 90s, and was created by Gil Archeron, a man who lived over in Tokyo who had contacted Jason Rubin and Andy Gavin to help out with the development of the original 2D game. And just for a bit of context, Jason Rubin and Andy Gavin are the founders of Naughty Dog, with Jason being the director of games like Crash Bandicoot and Jak and Daxter, and Andy being the lead programmer and designer for said games. Jason and Andy ended up designing a few characters before they ended up losing contact with Gil. Later on, after the development of Crash Team Racing, Jason and Andy were moving on to their next venture and remembered the idea that Gil had brought to them years ago. They tried to get in contact once more, but couldn't, so went out and pursued the idea on their own accord, eventually uploading a prototype of the original dubbed Lost Levels. Pretty cool story, huh? Only that it's not true. The game was simply created for promotional purposes for the interactive website, though interesting that it was only ever attached to the European site. I guess this story was released onto the website alongside the Lost Levels to create a bit of a rumor or to create a bit of a backstory for the game itself, but simply put, the game was developed by Sony Interactive for the sheer purpose of promotion. Now the game really isn't anything special, though it's an interesting piece of Jak and Daxter history, considering the fact that there's basically nothing about it lying around on the internet these days. I was absolutely thrilled to at least see the almost 14-minute gameplay clip here, the only footage of the game that exists, bringing back so many memories of playing it as a kid. I never really got too far with it as it really wasn't that fun, and most of the time I'm like, where the sweet dilly dally do I go, and what the fuck do I do? The objective of the game is to collect a total of 8 power cells to bring to Kara etc. in order to power the zoomer. You were able to explore Sandover Village, Sentinel Beach, and the Forbidden Jungle like I mentioned, though they barely resemble what the locations looked like in the actual PlayStation 2 game. All of the characters from Sandover Village appear: Samos, Uncle, the Mayor, the Farmer, etc., and you were tasked to do missions for them, which would range from trading precursor orbs with them for a power cell, just like in the actual game, or herding the yak owls for the farmer, finding the bird egg for the bird watcher, and they even went as far as putting the fishing minigame in, which would honestly be the funnest part of this Flash game. The game also has a brief intro sequence which tries its absolute best to explain the lore of the game and Jak and Daxter's current situation, but poorly delivers with the most hilarious spelling and grammar mistakes. Like, it's 100% apparent that they threw this bad boy together and said, fuck it, it's good to go. Seriously, let me read this junk out. The story that has happened. The precursors to leave a legacy. Much large robots, which one rusts in the ground. They leave an enormous source of the energy, eco. Honestly, much large, what are we, cavemen? Jak and Daxter live on a south island on the continent. They are two naughty boys that they never do what is said. God damn. They know that it is forbidden to going to the island of Misty. God damn it. But have ignored the warnings. Stealing a boat, they direct over to the island and have explored. Good God, I feel like I'm losing brain cells reading this. On the island, they have spied on two mysterious people, on an old man and one beautiful woman. They manage an army of horrible monsters. The old man wants the control of all the eco and to make everyone its slave. Jak and Daxter try to escape without being discovered, but when one of the monsters attacks them, Daxter is struck in an enormous bathtub of oily stuff. A dark eco, you know that fucking oily stuff? You know that dark eco oily shit? When he climbs outside, has become a hairy orange rat. Oh, this is too good. Now Jak and Daxter must find aid. They must find the old wise person who can again give return to Daxter within a human being. Good lord. But before that, they must try to stop the evil pair and its cowardly plan. Yeah, honestly, dude, we're pushing very, very close to caveman language with this. I'm convinced. The game has a classic 8-bit sort of retro theme playing in the background. Though at first, like, it is kind of nice, but then it's sort of on this endless loop, and it kind of sounds bad after a while. Honestly, after about the first 2 minutes, I feel like I'm playing RuneScape, like I'm back walking through fucking Lumbridge again. So that right there is Jak and Daxter: The Lost Levels. This has been sort of lingering around in my mind for so many years, and it's only very recently where I decided to actually do a bit of research on it and figure out more information towards the actual game itself. I'm absolutely blown away to know that there's very little of this on the internet, and hence the reason I'm actually making this video. Please do let me know if you ended up stumbling across this way back when. I don't know if there will be many people out there that even knew that this thing exists. Again, just considering the fact that it only resided on one version of the Jak and Daxter website. But even though it is a pretty big mess of a Flash game, very cool and niche nonetheless. However guys, I've been Cynical, hopefully you've enjoyed today's video, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.